Welcome into Two for Talking. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. We got Joe Bartnick and Josh Yohe here. Josh of The Athletic and Joe of comedy clubs around America. That's what we'll call it. Where are you at? Where are you coming? Where are you hitting soon? Where can people
Last
find
night I was at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And then this week I will be like 4 or 5 places around LA. And then Saturday night I'm at Almost Famous Wine in Livermore, California. So
All right, all you California Pens fans, which we know if you watch the Penguin games on the West Coast, there's plenty of them out there.
Oh yeah, and Parks Casino in Philly, the 20th.
Oh,
my enemy territory.
You know what? I gotta say, the comedy fans out there are fantastic in Philly. They're some of my best fans. They're great people. I love everything about Philadelphia except the creamsicles.
That's rightfully so. Well, welcome in, and guys, we had Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, and the Big Cats were playing some big boy hockey and knocking the Oilers around, and but the Oilers, man, they came out flying. The ice was certainly tilted, at least for the first 2 periods, in their direction. But the Bobo, the former Flyer. I love saying that because I love seeing a former Flyer go on to have great success. Bobrovsky stole. Did he steal the game already? I'll leave that up to you guys. What were your reactions to Game 1?
Yeah, I thought he did, Corey. I'll be honest. I think Florida's the better team, but I also think Edmonton was the much better team on Saturday. They had 3 breakaways in that game. They had grade A chance after grade A chance, and it wasn't the fourth liners of the Oilers getting those chances. McDavid had a great look in the first period. Hyman got robbed twice. Nugent Hopkins on the breakaway. I thought Bobrovsky was by far the best player on the ice, and I know it's only one game, but if Florida wins this series, that performance alone might have won him the Conn Smythe. He was really that good. Some of the athleticism that was on display, the anticipation, that was impressive goaltending. I think the best goaltending performance we've seen of the postseason. And Joe, it's incredible to see this in Bobrovsky, because this is a guy, for over the years, Penguins fans would salivate when he was in the other net in a big game because you knew you were going to beat him. And into his mid-30s, he's really starting to figure out the playoffs. I just thought he was sensational the other night.
He was absolutely sensational, Josh. I mean, it's his time to shine. We talked about it last week. I mean, he's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame if he gets a cup. He was fantastic. I don't take anything away from him, but it seems like the national response or everyone's thing is, oh well, Edmonton really outplayed them. And I thought they did the first 2 periods. I thought the third period, I thought Florida really controlled the game back again.
Agreed.
And Josh, you've probably taken more of these quotes than anybody on earth. We had our chances and we played better than them. That's loser talk to me. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I thought the response of that from the media can say what they want because we know who they're rooting for. But I thought the way that the Edmonton was talking like that, like, I don't know, man. It wasn't. I don't know that. It sticks to me because I've heard it too many times when I know it's kind of hollow. But I will give Edmonton did play much better the first 2 periods. I don't know if we can get into it now, but I thought, man, for the second half of the second period on, he went against everything that made him good for the first 8 months of his coaching tenure. That was he split up McDavid and Jesus and Leon. All of a sudden, 30 minutes into the final, he's all of a sudden they're all back in the same ship again. I thought it was a panic move. I mean, I can see, 10 minutes left in the third. Okay. But, that's when you get a third or fourth liner chip in a goal. And all of a sudden, then you only need Jesus to perform one miracle.
No, I mean, it's a fair point. I agree with what you said about the third period. Florida is just one of those teams. You give them a lead, they know how to shut down a game. It felt like they had the puck the entire third period. They really found themselves. And I think, Edmonton is a different kind of team to play against. They're just so much faster than everyone else. And I feel like Florida took some time to adjust to the speed in which they play, because the Oilers aren't like anyone else, just stylistically or, whether it be the decisions with the puck they make or the flat out foot speed. They play at a different pace than anyone else. And I do think it took the Panthers a while to adjust. You can look at it two different ways, Joe. You can say, boy, if Edmonton gets that many good looks the rest of the series, they might really have a chance here. Or the other view is, man, Florida really didn't play very well and they still won. And they're probably going to start playing better. So I think game 2, which is tonight, is probably a must win for Edmonton. I don't think you're going to win 4 or 5 against Florida. I know it's early in the series to be calling games a must win. But man, this just feels like a huge, huge game for Edmonton. Florida is just the kind of team, they're not going to give you wins. They really aren't. And it's just hard for me to imagine that team losing 4 out of 5. So I think it was a good win for them just because their goaltender clearly is locked in, which is a great sign. And they certainly have another level they can reach. And one other thing, Joe, do you think ESPN employees were actually given a memo that his name is no longer Connor McDavid? You only refer to him as the best player in the world. He is the best player in the world, I'm aware. But it was kind of funny how every single ESPN TV personality, best player in the world, best player. It was like, we don't promote hockey well enough as a league, so we're going to refer to him as the best player in the world at every single opportunity. It was a little nauseating toward the end.
I thought they rooted for McDavid even more than they rooted for the Rangers.
It felt that way.
It really felt that way. It was. I was pushing back because I will say I stopped listening to the audio feed. I stopped listening to them. I would listen to the Florida Panther radio guys. It's one guy, but they had 2 for the playoffs. But yeah, because I just can't take the incessant. They just call it from the Edmonton point of view the whole time. I do think that Edmonton, man, they blew that chance to win that game because I don't think Florida's going to play that bad again. I think that's the bigger thing to take from this. Yeah, they did blow some chances. Yeah, they had, Hyman had some chances. McJesus had a couple chances. But I think the third period is going to look way more like game 2 is going to look than the first period when it just seemed, you're absolutely right, Josh. They didn't match the speed other than the fact that McDavid didn't back check and Barkov had that sweet pass.
Yeah, for all they were talking about McDavid, he certainly didn't look very good on the first goal of the series, did he? We cannot deny that. But listen, it was there for Edmonton. That was a game they could have stolen without question. 30 seconds into the game, Bobrovsky misplays the puck right to McDavid and Hyman. If they score there, who knows how that alters the game?
Yeah,
maybe Edmonton relaxes a little bit and they play. They get another one. Who knows? So those things certainly can happen. But, for a lot of the game, it was kind of what we expected. You're not going to completely shut down Edmonton. But, Florida has the better goaltender. And even though Skinner has been good, Florida still has a decided advantage in net. And we kind of knew that going into the series. And I don't think we feel any differently about it now. And again, Florida's depth guys are so much better when their third and fourth liners are on the ice. You feel like a goal is a possibility. When it's Edmonton, it's kind of like when you're watching the Penguins, like when Crosby and Malkin are on the ice. They might score when their third and fourth lines are on the ice. At least in that game, and I think for the most part in general, you don't feel like they're all that threatening. So we know what Florida's advantages are, and they play pretty darn well in that building too. The people in South Florida actually seem to be into hockey for the first time, and if they win tonight, I'm telling you, they are very, very much in the driver's seat. Teams as good as them, when they go up 2-0, boy, the odds are in their favor.
Oh, 1,000%. I think that is the difference, though, between Bobo and Skinner. I think Skinner can make your, regular saves. He doesn't have that kind of magic flurry in him as much as Bobrovsky does. That's why Florida is so tough, because even if they do give up something to a team like the Rangers or, Edmonton, where it is Jesus and Leon, or it is Mika and Breadman, that there's a spectacular save waiting to be had. Not like, oh, it's a 2-on-1. It's like Jari 2-on-1. It's going in the net. There's not going to be a spectacular save. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just
I mean, and Bobrovsky's one of those guys. He is just so freakishly athletic That guy Fleury's very similar, and odd man rushes, they're such of a weapon because they can simply cover more space than your average NHL goaltender. And playing against a team like Edmonton, Edmonton's going to get some odd man chances. They are so aggressive. They're so fast. It's what they do. So you know that going in Florida, I keep going back to Barkov. I talk about him every week, and just what a matchup nightmare he is for other teams, because he plays defense like Kopitar, like Bergeron, and you saw that even though McDavid certainly had his looks, it's not easy for McDavid when that guy's on the ice. But look at the game's first goal, Joe. He turned on the Jets. McDavid didn't catch him. He made that gorgeous feed to Verhaeghe. He's just such of a great player. And when you have he's an X factor in a series, and he's going to make life difficult for McDavid.
Well, he's exactly what I've said, that he has the offense that Bergeron wished he had, that everyone pretends that Bergeron has.
Right.
I mean, and then he is fitting the guy, and Verhaeghe is such a clutch scorer. I mean, that line is just Evan Reinhart. I mean, it's such a great line. What's amazing about Barkov, though, is, I'd say him and Jesus battled to a 50-50 draw, but anytime Barkov was against anybody else, he stole the puck. The puck got cleared. I mean, he made some incredible defensive plays in that game.
I remember, man, this is going back maybe 5 years, but when our good friend Vincent Trocheck was still playing in Florida, and I was just chatting with him after a morning skate one day about Barkov. And this was when Barkov was really young. He looks at me, and Trocheck says, "You realize this guy's as good as Bergeron or Kopitar, right?" I said, "Really? You think?" I said, "I know he's really good. You think he's that good?" He said, "Man, if he played in New York or Toronto, you have no idea. He said, you have no idea how great this guy is." He said, "But everyone only talks about his defense. Watch him with the puck. He said, watch what a playmaker he is. He's only going to get better." And Trocheck was right. I mean, this is a rare player with the gifts that he has. And even though Edmonton, yes, they have the star power advantage because of their two big guys, but Barkov's a real star. He might not be the flashiest in the world, but you could make a very compelling argument he's one of the 10 best players in hockey.
Oh, absolutely. He is a little bit more offense than Kopitar. And I always said if Kopitar played in Boston, they would have built the statue already.
Oh, no question.
I mean, but Barkov played. And one thing I will give credit, not one thing, a lot of things that Edmonton did. Edmonton had way more offensive zone time. They had more offensive zone time in the first two periods of that game than New York did in all six.
No. Oh, absolutely they did. No, I mean,
Florida actually looked like a couple times they had trouble clearing the puck, which was they had no problem once clearing the puck against the Rangers.
No, they didn't. And, there's a lot of things to take into account. They had a week off that can affect teams in all kinds of different ways, good and bad, as we know. And I do think seeing Edmonton, they only play them twice a year. That first game against them has to be a jolt, just because, especially when 97's on the ice, it's just a different ball game with him out there.
Well, I wrote that in my column. I picked Big Cats in 6. I said game one, it will be interesting because of the week off, because the Panthers are a well-oiled machine. Yeah. So that week off, they may be out of gear a little bit. But it's not like Leon and Jesus forgot how to be Leon and Jesus in a week.
No.
They were good. I thought that was their one, not their one chance. I always think stealing game one is everyone's best chance. Mm-hmm. But Josh, you're not overstating it. Game two is massive because you can't go 0-2.
No, but it can be a swing, because if Edmonton finds a way to win tonight, if they get the split, game 3 back in Alberta is going to be a zoo. That's going to be pandemonium. That's going to be a tough game for Florida to win no matter what. I mean, they are going right into the Lions' den in game 3 in Edmonton. That's going to be a circus. So, if Edmonton wins tonight, all of a sudden, man, they're feeling really good about themselves. I don't think there's any question. So it could certainly be a swing game in the series. One thing about Florida I was thinking about, for all of their great players, and, we think the world of how deep they are and how good they are. I feel like, even though he's one of my most favorite players in the league to watch, that Matthew Tkachuk's been a little quiet lately. I didn't really notice him that much last night. I feel like he's not playing maybe at quite the level he was last spring where he was insanely good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe he's a little off his game, but that's also maybe a scary thing for Edmonton because a guy as good as him, you're probably not going to keep him down forever. I just find it interesting that I feel like he's been a little quiet.
Well, the other thing too is, if he's a little quiet even in game 2, the blood will be boiling in one of the most hated villains ever in the Battle of Alberta.
Oh,
Like the venom will be out in Edmonton if he needed any bit of a wake up call. But yeah, well, I thought he played good. He's almost contained his emotions a little bit. I think last year he was just on pure adrenaline. I mean, last year he was arguably one of the 3 best players in hockey in June.
No,
you would put him up against McKinnon. He was that good. He carried that franchise for a month and a half. So maybe he could never reach that level again. But and I think Barkov got so good, and so did Reinhart. I think him and Bennett back together, though, there's a reckoning. I'm not saying this because I picked Florida, but I thought Florida only looked themselves in the third period. And I loved your point about how it took him 2 periods to get used to the speed. It's such a great point.
And I forgot about Tkachuk's history in Alberta. You're right. He will be a marked man in game 3. I'm sure he will be ready. Perhaps his brother will be in the crowd with like 10 beers in his hand like he was 2 years ago in the playoffs, which of course became quite the entertaining sideshow as only the Tkachuks can. And I did notice him once in the first period. There was a little scrum around the net. And I noticed he had McDavid in a headlock for about 10 seconds. And he wouldn't let him go. Which I said to myself, gee, I wonder who's in the headlock down there. I noticed Tkachuk wouldn't let someone go. Then I see 97 finally get it. I'm like, oh, that's what he's doing.
Well, what's interesting though, if he is the lightning rod up there, that might be a nice way to get a couple power plays. Because Evander Kane will be looking to settle some scores, especially if he hasn't hit on the score sheet yet.
No, that's yeah. So you're right. I think the series, not that I won't enjoy game 2 this evening, but when it heads to Edmonton, I mean, that's when things are really going to intensify. I have no doubt. And Tkachuk will make his mark at some point. Yeah, I don't think he's playing poorly. They are just so diverse and deep, the way they play. Tkachuk doesn't need to carry the load the way McDavid and Draisaitl do, right? And they had that stat during the game. I heard them say when McDavid and Draisaitl don't score a point in a playoff game, the Oilers are like 1-10. Or 1-11 all time, something like that. So that's all you need to know. It reminded me of, I think it was Sid's first 2 seasons. The Penguins never won a game when he didn't have a point. And that just tells you a team's not deep enough. Or by the time the Penguins won the Cup in Detroit in 2009, Sid didn't have a point in that game, didn't play half the game because he was hurt, and they still won because they had just evolved into such of a great team. I don't think Edmonton's at that point yet. So yeah, I mean, those 2 big guys have to carry the load in a way that Florida's big names really don't.
That was my biggest questioning of what Knobloch was doing, though, was I thought he pulled the McDavid Draisaitl card so early in that game. I mean, even a 2-goal game, you say let's get one before the end of the period. Okay, so maybe you load up with a minute left. But when he just started running those guys with Hyman constantly, it's like, and Henrique, I talked about him last week. Like, he was playing great. He gets like 13 minutes of ice time, and Kane's not out there that much. That's not helping them. It's like it's only getting those guys cold, and you need some of those guys to score. I don't know. I thought that was a mistake on his part.
No, I think there was a bit of panic there. Probably that's probably the best word to use. And it's interesting, during his in-game interview with ESPN, it was the first or second period, he actually said, I love how we're playing right now. Like we're even though they were down 1-0 at the time, I think, he said our game's good. And I agree with him.
Yeah.
And then he makes all these line changes. It seemed a little curious. And it'll be interesting also to see how games are officiated in this series, because Edmonton didn't score on the power play, but man, they had some looks. I mean, I wouldn't say Florida's penalty kill was shutting them down so much. That was just when Bobrovsky was at his very best, when they had the man advantage. And Florida's power play didn't look good at all, by the way. And Edmonton, one thing we don't talk about with them, their PK. they're like 92 or 93% in the postseason. It's been fantastic. Florida's power play didn't really look sharp, which just emphasizes the point. The more the series is played at 5-on-5, the better it is for the Cats.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Joe, to see how they handle this because they want to be physical. They want to start shit. That's how they play. But you got to stay out of the penalty box too against that team. It's kind of a catch-22 for them.
Well, I thought they did. I thought they played pretty disciplined. I thought Bennett's call was a little weak for the playoffs. But
I agree.
It wasn't the worst call I've seen this playoffs, but it was a little weak. You're right about their penalty kill. Edmonton's being superb. I didn't like how Corey Perry's he's not a second line guy. I don't know why they dropped Kane down the third line. I was like, whoa. That's the one guy that can get in and stir some things up and is a harder matchup for Florida. Perry's not even going to get there. So what's the point of that? I don't know. I didn't think Nala coached a very solid game. And then, if the guys at ESPN, if Mark Messier can open up the crypt and figure something out, then everyone should know. Why is Cece and Nurse together? They're a minus. That's all they are.
I think Nurse does something like he's out there for like 26 of the goals that they've given up.
Oh yeah,
like a large number.
No, it's a big story in Edmonton. Darnell Nurse makes an awful lot of money, and he's just not very good right now. But bottom line, he is on the ice for so many goals against. He doesn't really give you that much offensively. I don't know why they don't try something different there. I agree with you, and that's why the problem with Edmonton, they have these little flaws when you start analyzing them. The guys you can take advantage of in certain situations, and Florida really doesn't. No,
so, Ryan Lumbark, he's been a healthy scratch now a couple games.
He's a good player.
I love that guy.
Mm-hmm.
I would take him in a heart. Obviously, you'd take almost anybody off that team, but he's exactly what the Penguins need. He's exactly what any team could use. And I'm not a Nick Cousins guy, but Nick Cousins is a healthy. Both those guys would be. They would be second and they would be second and third liners on Edmonton. That's how. Deep.
Well, if Cousins were on the ice, Edmonton would have 7 power plays every game. So that would ultimately be a problem, I think. And boy, I thought of you the other night, Joe, and when Evan Rodriguez went top shelf. I always think of Game 6 against the Rangers, the penalty that still has you pissed off 2 years later. Because Erod's been pretty good for the Panthers. He gives them just enough depth scoring. He'll bury one, and he's so streaky. He might get hot now. Who knows? But that was certainly a big moment for him.
He's playing well for them. He's playing well for them. You gotta love how Igor went after him though. You gotta find the smallest guy on the ice.
Oh, I know.
Well, you know what though? But he's 10 pounds heavier and 5 inches taller when he's playing with Bennett and Kachuk.
Oh, yes. I would be pretty aggressive if I were on the ice with those two as well. You can run your mouth all you want, and that's the beauty of Florida. The skill, the nastiness. They have about 5 or 6 different ways they can beat you in a series. The Oilers, they've got one way to beat you in a series, and they're great at it. But they're going to be in a world of hurt if they lose tonight.
What was the over-under on McDavid having some blood on his chin? That was, like 5 minutes into the game, it felt like.
Didn't take long. Yeah.
No. Go ahead, Joe.
I think he bladed NWA style. What was that? He come out of scrum with blood on his chin. Was that Kachuk handing him the blade? I don't know. I didn't see it get hit.
And he wore a Band-Aid the rest of the game, which is kind of weird. Players don't usually wear Band-Aids.
I think Kyprios or somebody was saying how that look was not a good look.
Yeah, I didn't think it was necessary. If you're bleeding a little bit, it's okay. I thought that was a curious move. I've never seen the Band-Aid approach. But very odd. And McDavid, he didn't play a bad game by any stretch. He was noticeable. I wouldn't say he was shut down, but I will go on record as saying if he doesn't get any points in a game, Edmonton has very little chance of winning.
No, I thought he played very good. I just did not. I just don't like the quotes of, well, we had our chances. We like what we saw. That's you didn't win. That's the bigger point. But did you hear what Gretzky said? That Barkov is the best. I was going to bring up that since Brian Trottier.
Huge.
Wow.
Like, that's unbelievable. I when I heard that, I was like, I did a
What
double
did he?
take.
What was the exact line? I actually didn't hear this.
He said that Barkov is the best defensive forward since Brian Trottier.
Wow. Listen, I mean, I'll take Gretzky's word for that. He would know what he's talking about. He had to play against guys like that all the time.
Oh, it fuels my fire for every time I say how Trottier is underrated and guys like Stan Fischler attack me.
Oh.
not attack me, but he goes, who underrates Brian Trottier? It's like, wow, I understand.
I think everybody does. Brian Trottier is one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's never in the top 10 list.
Right.
You know, which,
oh, yeah. No, I mean, that's interesting that Gretzky said that, but I mean, maybe he's right. With all due respect to Kopitar, Bergeron, Jonathan Taves, whatever great defensive forwards, you want to throw. Datsuk and Zetterberg were really good, but this guy is special. He really is in so many different ways, and he's so big and rangy and strong, and he anticipates everything, and he just works so hard. The more you watch, he's one of those guys, Joe. I have the pleasure of being at so many games in person. Sometimes I'll just isolate on him and watch everything that he does for a shift. He's just so much different. The attentiveness to detail, the way he drives forwards crazy. He does it all.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier in the show. Josh was like, a couple times he went up against non-McDavids, and it was just like he just took the puck. It was like he was like the sixth grader against the third grader.
Yeah, I mean,
it's getting out of the zone. Like, there you
right.
go. You had your fun. It's over now.
No, he's that guy. He really is.
I've been Lister Aaron. They said he missed the finals last year. Not that made a difference against Vegas, but Paul Maurice said that was a huge loss for them. Remember, he got hurt the final game of the Eastern Conference Finals, so he's in there. I mean, talk about a third liner that can score. I know it was the empty netter, but he's a nice piece. There's just so much more depth. That's why I'm saying loading up. And you talk about it's game one. I know you want to win game one, but just talking about you want to have everybody in the mix because you hope to have a game 5, a game 6, and a game 7.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Joe, I wanted to ask you as a comedian, you might be in tune with this. When did Paul Maurice become a comedian during his interviews and press conferences? He's always been very likable and good to deal with. Every time he talks, he's got a great one-liner. I assume you appreciate this.
I love Paul Maurice. I think he's hilarious. But I will quote the great Doug McLean. He got a lot funnier when he started winning.
Yeah. Yep. No, that is a very,
I was going to
very good
spit
point.
take out of Josh if you're watching the
Yeah,
video.
I know. There was almost a spit take there.
Because I don't remember. I can't do McLean's Canadian voice. I love.
No, that is for sure. And
Yeah,
I think Maurice knows it too, right? I think he's walking with his chest puffed out a little bit these days. He knows how good his team is. I remember a couple of maybe 3 years ago, the Penguins were in Florida, and I was chatting with Mike Sullivan. And the Penguins had lost a game, I think, and I asked him about the game. And he doesn't usually say stuff like this. He looked at me and he said, "Do you know how good that team is?" I said, "Yeah, they're pretty good." His eyes got big. He said, "They're really good." Sully doesn't say things like that very often about other teams. That was years ago. Everybody kind of knew this team was coming.
Well, speaking of Paul Maurice, though, I mean, look how they haven't just stormed right through the playoffs like they probably could. How good they are, but they've had their ups and downs. Maurice has either had a joke or maintained a very easygoing style. He hasn't really freaked out maybe once or twice. And look how they're playing.
Yeah.
Knobloch, the first sign of any remote panic, he's loading up.
Right. No, there was maybe there is some coaching immaturity there a little bit. And that's one of the reasons I like Florida in this series also. They've been in this stage before. They've been in the final. I don't think the Penguins beat Detroit in 2009 if they weren't there in 2008. I think there's really something to be said for that. And Florida's not going to get rattled with Paul Maurice behind the bench. There's no question.
I won't turn this into everyone has to think and take out their phone to look, but this is one of the higher star powered. It's almost like a 2009, 2008 final, don't you think? With all the kind of would be Hall of Famers, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Seems like there's a lot of star power on this.
No, there is. And I mean, I was Some of the finals over the last few years, I haven't really been all that excited to watch, but I was excited about 8:20 p.m. on Saturday night. Like that was, it's just, and I think because McDavid's in it, I think it gives it a little bit more of a prize fight feel, right? Because everybody wants to see this guy play. He's in the very prime of his career. And Florida's a pretty entertaining team that has so much star power in its own right. Yeah, it might not get great, everyone, TV ratings because of Southern market and a Canadian market. Who cares? If you're a hockey fan, I think you like this series a lot.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week. Like, what do I care if ESPN stock goes down? I want to see McDavid versus the best team in the East.
That's right.
And I'll tell you just that, like, I know I did this Sklar Brothers podcast and talking hockey. They're Blueser fans, but they were fired up for this series. A lot of non-hockey, they're hockey guys. They love hockey. But I mean, a lot of people who are just, hockey is their third or fourth favorite sport, which is most of America. They're fired up about this series. They want to see McJesus.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And I Joe, whenever you were talking earlier about McJesus's quotes, this is going to get, a lot of people in Edmonton and Alberta not thrilled, but I hate online. I see, it's like whenever McDavid's doing something great, they're like, he's so much better than Sidney Crosby. The moment he had 0 points in his first Stanley Cup final game, I saw this flood of tweets from Edmonton fans. You know who else didn't have any points in his first Stanley Cup final game? Sidney Crosby. Like they immediately go back to him, and I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, but until he actually straps it, straps him on and actually pulls it out, I don't believe, he's not even close.
I thought Messier purposely snubbed the Penguins in the opening. He didn't mention Lemieux or Sid when naming the best players to ever win the Stanley Cup.
Well, I didn't even notice that part because I probably fell asleep.
I noticed the keeper of the crypt, Mark Messier.
Yeah.
It didn't take long for the audio to go off in the Bartnick household after that.
I stayed through it because as much as Chicken Parm ruined my 1993 summer, I think he's an excellent analyst, and I do like McDonough and the lady, I'm spacing her name right now. I think she does a great job.
Emily Kaplan. Yeah, she's great.
I think she does a great job.
No, are you the kind of guy, Joe, when you were young? I feel like in the Bartnick household when you were young during Steelers games, the audio on the TV went off and Meyer and Cope came on the radio. Is that how it was?
No, because my dad just enjoyed ripping on Bob Trumpy for 4 hours.
Oh, the old Don Crickey and Bob Trumpy duo.
Yeah,
yes.
because when we were, in my, when I was a little kid, I remember watching the games. I wasn't a announcer aficionado, and then I came up in the, or when I was really paying attention was, later Noel, when we had like the F team, because we're playing Cincinnati, no one's in the country's watching us. The 4-9 Steelers take on the 4-8 Bengals. So we had
Bubby Brister days.
Right? Yeah, whatever. Was Cower was Brister, right? Or was that Noel?
That was Noel.
Okay.
I think he was
probably
there
overlapped briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad when you got like Beasley Reese as the color commentator.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
No, but we always, my dad liked Don Crickey. It's funny because my dad does not like. It's funny who he likes, who he doesn't like. We kind of battle a little bit because I like Collinsworth personally. Not personally, I never met him personally, but I think he does a good job. I'm not as what would the word be when you? Not protective, but I don't. I'm not as protective of the Steelers as I am of 66 and 87.
Yeah,
I get it.
That's fair. Yeah, and I get the feeling too with the, like you were saying with Game 3. I was only 7 whenever the Penguins won the Stanley Cup in '92, but I remember Game 3 in Chicago, and I think it had been close to 2 decades since they had been in the Cup final. And I remember that being a raucous game and Tommy B standing on his head and stealing that game. I believe it was 1-0, right?
Yep.
Game 3. And I just have a feeling Bobrovsky's going to have to steal one. He's already stole one game, but I think he's going to have to steal one up in Edmonton. But we'll see how it goes. And
well, he's gonna have to play the same level. I think Florida's gonna play better. There's no doubt that Edmonton is I put a lot of money for them to win game 3. That's why it's imperative for Florida to play much better and win game 2.
Yeah, and I think you guys are right. The third period game of Florida is what the real Florida is. They were just catching up to the Oilers. So that'll do it for the first segment here on Two for Talking. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit. There was some Jake Guentzel news, and then also an interesting question that trickled in Josh's mailbag that Josh thought would be a good idea to throw out there, and then also some NHL officiating pet peeves. We'll get to that and more on Two for Talking in the second segment. Welcome back to Two for Talking. Guys, Jake Guentzel, the news came out that he is available from Carolina. I guess he's not going to re-sign. Carolina is willing to part with him for what, a fourth-round pick, somewhere in the mid-rounds. I guess it wasn't a wonderful honeymoon down there in Carolina for him. He didn't enjoy it, or they don't want to spend the money on him. I get it.
Corey, they're cheap.
Man,
that's why he's not coming back there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, they're not going to. But
they don't want to pay their Hall of Fame announcers. You think they want to pay Jake Guentzel?
Yeah, good point. But do you guys think that how does this kind of reframe the deal that we got? Because the amount of the players we got, prospects plus picks, and in exchange for a guy who's going to turn into maybe a fourth-round pick, it looks a little bit better now that they didn't win the Stanley Cup, and this is the return they're getting.
Yeah, I think it does. It looks really bad on Carolina's part, quite honestly. You won one playoff series, and that's it. And now you're not going to be able to retain him long term, apparently. And Joe's right; they're cheap. I don't think Jake had a problem playing down there at all. But I don't think they're willing to give him the kind of money he could get on the open market. And just so people know, when you talk about being traded, it's just basically his negotiation rights. So Carolina can say trade him to Chicago for a fourth-round pick, and Chicago will have the next 3 weeks to sign him. And Jake's under no obligation to sign with whoever would acquire his rights. He can still become a free agent on July 1st. He's going to become a fabulously wealthy man, as if he isn't already. We already know that. I can tell you, I talked to some people over the weekend who were close to Jake in regards to the Penguins, because I know people will want to know, is there a chance Jake comes back? What's the deal? And I was told that there was a, quote, small chance that Jake comes back. Now, what does that mean? That means Jake, I think, would love to come back. But I also think there are other teams that are able and willing to offer him a hell of a lot more money for a lot more years. And the Penguins only have $13 million of cap space, and they have like 6 or 7 guys to sign right now. They can't give him $9 million a year or whatever it is that he's going to command. The only way I could see Jake Guentzel returning to Pittsburgh, and I think it's a long shot regardless, the only way it happens is if Kyle Dubas is able to unload a considerable amount of salary before July 1st. If he trades a Riley Smith and trades somebody else, all of a sudden you got $22 million in cap space. Then, yeah, maybe it's a possibility, but I still think it's pretty unlikely.
Josh, you're so smart. But I was literally thinking, well, they got to trade Riley Smith before July 1st if they're gonna get Jake Guentzel. I thought of that. And as you were saying, there's only one way to get him. I love Jake. I don't want Jake back because I think Jake needs to go somewhere else. But I do think that it almost seems like there's a consensus, at least Canadian media, maybe because he's American, lowball of him. I think if he doesn't get double digits for five, if he wants 8 years, maybe he doesn't get. If he doesn't take a 5x10, I think there's no way he's not a $10 million guy.
Yeah, I think somebody would throw that at him for sure. Depending on where he wants to play, maybe he would take less to come back to Pittsburgh.
That's what I'm saying though. Like, right, Josh, like if all he gets is most is 9.25 somewhere, maybe he will take 8.5 to come back.
It's possible. I could see it. I
don't think it's a bad move at 8.5 for the Penguins, but I just think someone has to give him $10 million.
Well, a couple of things to consider here. There was news over the weekend. Gary Bettman gave his annual State of the Union press conference, the salary cap is going to go way up. It's going to be at 100 million probably in 3 years. So if you're a team that has some money to spend this summer, you're looking to make a splash, and there is a good free agency crop. Jake Guentzel, Sam Reinhart, there's some other really good names out there. The cap going up dramatically in the next few years is a huge deal. Since COVID, it hasn't gone up hardly at all. That has really restricted teams, including the Penguins, who anticipated it would keep going up. And then all of a sudden the league revenues slow down, cap doesn't go up. It really hurt a lot of teams. So I think you will see teams be more aggressive in this particular market because revenues are up, the cap is going up. That's only a good thing for Jake Guentzel and his agent, Ben Hankinson. Man, they've got to be feeling good right now. And there's all kinds of teams that are going to throw money at him. What if Gabriel Landeskog's done? Colorado has a bunch of money. If you're Jake Guentzel, wouldn't you enjoy going out there for the next 5 years playing with that team? There's all kinds of teams to consider. So is it a possibility Jake comes back? It is, because he loves it here. Because Sid loves having him here. And those two love playing together. So I think just because of that, it's something Jake will consider. But I still think he'd have to take a lot less money to do it.
I agree with you. He'd have to take a lot less money. But I'm saying is I can't believe just the overall kind of general consensus lowballing of him right now. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's just the Canadian media, but I think there's no way that he's not getting double digits. Plus he played great for Carolina. Wasn't he? Well, you know what I mean? It enhanced his case that he's a big game player and doesn't need Sid.
Yeah, if you ever thought he was a creation of Sidney Crosby, watch what he did in Raleigh. He was better than a point per game player there.
Yeah,
he was outstanding, and I think that was huge for him. If he went to Raleigh and had 10 points in 20 games and wasn't effective, I think that could have really hurt his value on the open market.
Exactly.
But I think teams see that and like, man, maybe this guy's just a great player. Yeah, sure, Sid made him better. Sid will make anyone better. But I really think his reputation was greatly aided by what he did in Raleigh. And yeah, Carolina doesn't like to spend money. We know that about them. I never thought he was going to sign there when that was the team he was traded to, just because of that. And if you're Jake, why would you? Like, why wouldn't you want to go to July 1st, even if it's just for your ego, just to see, Jesus, that team give me $11 million a year. I don't know if anyone's going to give him that much, but
no.
It only takes one. And there's going to be a huge market for him.
Yeah, especially a team that's close.
Oh, yeah.
It thinks they're close. He's the perfect guy to get.
Sure. And, even you can make a case for so many teams. If I was Detroit, I would love to have somebody who's still fairly young like Jake, who knows how to win big games with all the young talent they have there, but they haven't really been able to put it together. He makes perfect sense. If I'm Utah, whatever their name's going to be, like, you want somebody who's got a little bit of name recognition, who's won a cup, who's just a reliable, good player. They have a ton of money to spend. Like I said, Colorado makes a lot of sense. I've already heard Seattle's probably going to make a big pitch for him.
Seattle would be great for him. You know what's interesting about Detroit is because my puck-off partner, Fraser Smith, we delve a lot of Detroit. They have Lucas Raymond. They have David Perron and Patty Kane, all up for negotiation. And we did a little game like what's the big, and it's obviously it's Lucas Raymond, who played incredible down the stretch.
Yes.
And then Perron and then Kane. And it makes me sad about David Perron because he was one of, I think, the 5 or 6 worst Penguins in the Crosby era. Everywhere else, he's Dino Ciccarelli.
And he kills the Penguins.
Yeah. I said he's living proof that it's not easy to play. That not everyone can play with Evgeny Malkin. He's the only guy that didn't play well with Evgeny Malkin.
Yeah, Perron had I think he had 8 goals in his first 13 games with the Penguins, and then he completely disappeared. It was very bizarre.
I was like, he must not like French fries on his sandwiches.
Maybe that's it.
He doesn't like French fries on the salad and sandwiches. I don't know, but he was confounding. Like, he was always good, and then he came here and was just like, oh, he stunk. Then he goes and wins a cup, and now he's one of the most cherished free agents around.
But yeah, Guentzel, listen, he's going to name his price on July 1st. So
do you think it makes it? I don't know him at all. So do you think he already has his 1 cup? So do you think he's going to go for the better team or the more money?
Really good question, Jake. I'll tell you another thing about Jake. Jake's not really a big city guy. He's kind of an outdoorsman, kind of quiet. I actually bet he was happy in Raleigh. I think that was a great place for Jake and his lifestyle. Jake likes to win. I will say he is a fiercely competitive guy. I couldn't see him, willingly going to a bad team unless there was some outrageous amount of money. I know he wants to play for a good team. And I always tell people this, like he really didn't want to leave Pittsburgh. I mean, you can say that about anybody who gets traded. Like you could see the look. He had the broken finger, so he was in the press box with us the last couple of weeks of his time in Pittsburgh. He looked like he just lost his best friend because he knew he was going to be traded. He didn't want to be. I mean, he was just so mopey the last couple of weeks. I felt bad for the guy. He never wanted to leave. I think there was maybe a little bit of bad blood between he and Kyle Dubas because I don't think Jake felt like a fair offer was ever made. I think Jake felt like they always wanted to trade him to get some assets back, and that really drove him nuts. But I still think he would come back if he was offered a fair deal. I don't know that Kyle was that interested in bringing him back, and he might not be able to. What if he can't unload any of these contracts? If that's the case, there's no Jake Guentzel, but you don't even think about it.
Well, that's scary with it, Jake or not.
Yeah.
I mean, Riley Smith coming back, I think, is non-negotiable. I think you have to just take whatever, a 6-pack, even if it's warm. Like he can't come back.
Like a bag of used practice pucks from the 90s with the orange logo on them.
He was not good last year, but he was a little better later in the season. Maybe that little surge he made at the end and the fact that he only has 1 year left on his deal, maybe there will be a taker. I suspect Kyle will be able to deal him. Maybe Vegas wants him back. I don't know, but I think they'll be able to, and I think that will happen sooner rather than later.
I mean, Josh, you have to take a flyer on him for $5 million, right? I mean, he's not making that much money. I would just rather see someone making 877, 850 playing with a little spunk than him floating around.
No, he was painful to watch all season. And the funny thing about him, I always liked him in Vegas. I always noticed him. I thought, man, he's a good, solid player. I just couldn't believe the guy that I saw. It just.
Hey, I said in this podcast, he was the first month, him and Gino looked like it was like the rebirth of Ryan Malone or the rebirth of James Neal. And he goes to the White House, he sees his old girlfriends, he doesn't want to come back here anymore.
No. I mean, that's that's one way to put it. But I mean, he looked disinterested the whole time he was here. He really did. And I will never forget Penguins played in Vegas. It was in January, and he was hurt. So just a scratch for that game. And he was there on the trip, and Vegas had a little thing in between periods where kids were playing hockey on the ice. And one of the kids playing was Jonathan Marchessault's kid. And Marchessault actually came out on the bench during the intermission to watch his kid play. Riley Smith takes the elevator downstairs, walks over, goes onto the Vegas bench and sits on their bench with Marchessault during the intermission watching that. And I'm thinking, it might be a very small, insignificant thing, but it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, what are you doing sitting on the other team's bench during a game? You couldn't sit on the Penguins bench and watch that. He never wanted to be in Pittsburgh. We all know it. And he, I guess in a way, to his credit, he wasn't phony about it. He certainly didn't hide it.
Right.
It's like Adam Banks, hanging out with the Hawks instead of coming over with the Ducks. I don't know. And by the way, I'm going to make my pitch to anybody out there, like let's say Edgar Snyder or Live-In Furniture, who maybe has some Kenny Pickett marketing dollars sitting around because you don't have him anymore. Why don't we maybe combine that together and pad Jake Guentzel with some sponsorships, so he can get more than the Jake Shake. Maybe Kyle Dubas can give him 8.5 and then we can, get a couple sponsors together because Kenny Pickett's not in town. And then we could turn Kenny Pickett's leaving into an even better experience for all of us.
I was in Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago, and I had the at Burgatory. I had the Lemieux Foundation shake. It was really good.
Was it?
It was not only was I helping the big guy out and the charity, but the shake was delicious. Yeah, it was sweet as hell, but it wasn't overly sweet. Like the Jake shake I never had, but just reading the ingredients was like, oh my God, that just seemed like a lot for me.
It was diabetes in a cup.
I would think so. And yeah, the milkshake I wonder how their business is since the Jake Shake has gone by. I mean, they need to hook up.
How do you not
they
pick up
should sponsor
Malkin?
something.
How do you not pick up Malkin? Make me a milkshake, Malkin. How do you not pick up Malkin?
That would
That's easy.
seem, yeah. I think you need to be on their marketing team, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I went there. I actually went in and stopped in. I happened to be by one the day after his last game. He got hurt and he scored a goal. And I went in and I mean, I've maybe had like one or two before in my life. And the girl, I said, hey, Jake Shakes. And she said, yeah. I said, this might be the last one. She said, I think a lot of people have said that today. Yeah, Milkshake Factory, reach out. But yeah, I can't, I saw these Edgar Snyder, all that kind of stuff. And you guys the wheel started turning in the business, man. I'm like, let's get Pittsburgh to come together and pad Jake. And let's get him over the into the double digits. Just, some from the Penguins, some from us. If you could start GoFundMe, I'm sure you'd be able to get it.
Well, I will say this though, and I'm not trying to knock Jake whatsoever because he brought great memories and he's a great guy. I just want things to turn over a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, it's time.
I want someone that's going to crack a stick over somebody's skull in that spot, and maybe 10 less goals. I mean, I put Ryan Lubberg. He's not Jake Guentzel. I get it. But just that change of energy, just someone to have Sid's back as he gets older, just a little aggression, just something with bigger shoulders, someone that when they hit the boards, they don't think they're going to shatter.
That's right. And listen, Jake's a great player. We all know that. But Kyle Dubas, when he's asked about this team, he says it numerous times now. He has come right out and said, we need to get younger. We need to get faster. Jake's going to be 30 in October. And for all of his attributes, he's not really that fast. So when I hear Kyle say that, I just have the sense that he's not all that interested in bringing Jake Guentzel back. I just don't think he feels that it's a reasonable course of action for this team. And realistically, we always want to bring everyone back in Pittsburgh, right? But it probably doesn't make that much sense unless he would take an outrageously cheap deal.
Well, Josh and Corey, I'm the old man on this show, and I am a Neanderthal. When I heard younger and faster, I didn't hear bigger and tougher. Right. And if you look at the way the playoffs are going, it's getting bigger and it's getting tougher. Really, the blip on the screen was, Chicago was very skilled, and so LA had their skill, but Chicago was very skilled. They had some tough guys, and of course, Horny and Cooney, and we had Helga. We had tough guys, but we need those guys, and we don't have really any of them anymore.
No, you're right. Even look at Edmonton. Yes, they have two great players. They're highly skilled. They've got Evander Kane, Corey Perry, Darnell Nurse. These are big, nasty players to play against.
Desharnais and Ekholm. And they got 9 guys that'll break your head with a stick.
You need that balance. Colorado had a bunch of big, tough guys a couple of years ago, and they're a great cup team. So Tampa, you cannot win cups without somewhat of a physical edge and some size, and the Penguins have neither. You're right.
Yep. Well, I think we're gonna have to save a couple of those topics that we were gonna get to in segment number 2. We'll save those for next week because Jake, I should have known that Jake Guentzel. Yeah, I should have known that Jake Guentzel was gonna take the whole second segment because it's such a fan favorite. Well, when we come back on the third segment, we're gonna talk a little bit about Cam Hayward returns to OTAs, and then also a little bizarre thing with Cap Friendly being bought by the Washington Capitals. So we'll get into that and more on the third segment of Two for Talking. Welcome into the third segment of Two for Talking. First off, did you guys see the little news? Joe, thank you for reminding me of it. But I thought it was so bizarre. Cap Friendly, which I think we all use that website pretty frequently to go look and see, how much cap space the Penguins have and what our contracts look like and everything like that. And it got announced yesterday that they'll be shutting down on July 1st. Because the Washington Capitals, bought them. So first of all, I have to ask you, what is going to be on capfriendly.com? Like what would penguinsfriendly.com? It sounds like a penguins dating site. You know what I mean? Like it's like where penguins fans can meet each other, which don't get me wrong, I think would actually be a fantastic business idea. Like I'm married, so I don't need it, but I'm just saying I know that would work. That would have worked really well back in my dating days.
Well, that's why I loved getting able to talk to Josh once a week. like use his professional knowledge. What is going to happen now? Like, why did they buy it and then to shut it down? What's the point of that? And what is going to happen? What's the new cap friendly? Like everyone needs a cap friendly. Is the league going to provide that service? What is going on?
Yeah, this is a real problem for sports writers such as myself who rely quite heavily on cap friendly. It just seems kind of bizarre to me. Like I don't know what's in it for somebody else will start a site that's basically the same thing. I don't really see what the benefit for the Capitals is all that much. It just, especially on the weekend of the Stanley Cup Final, there's always all kinds of headlines. I wasn't expecting that one, but maybe Ted's bored. I know he's got a lot of money. He's not getting his arena in Alexandria, Virginia, like he wanted. Maybe he just wanted to throw some money somewhere else, but it seemed like an odd place to go.
But why would you buy it and shut it down?
Right.
That's what I don't understand. Like they did him wrong once in the past. There was a clerical error.
Maybe
that's what I think it's the dating
for that paranoid. I don't know. And I'm not sure that they should be allowed to. It seems like a conflict of interest and just a very strange thing going on here. It's not helping anyone, that's for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is they have some bizarre, domain name. As a business person, I've gone through the domain world of like it gets weird with domain names, like companies. If their brand could be loosely associated with a domain name that you own, they want it and they'll come after it. So I don't know if it's the domain name. I don't know if it's that's what I was wondering. Is it the info that's on there that they're not a fan of? It's just a weird
why doesn't
thing.
Ted Leonce's dating site for Capitals fans? Why is it just called capfriendly.net? I don't understand.
And there is
I mean, like he needs that name. That name is Cap Friendly, so precious. I mean,
no, you're right. And I mean, there are other sites. Puckpedia is one that is kind of a competition. So maybe they'll become the next big site. There are others too over the years that pop up because hockey fans all want to be general managers, right?
Right.
So they're all obsessed with all of the numbers like that. So
I don't understand any of it. I'm sorry, Corey. I really don't understand any of it. The parts where if you send a guy to Wilkes-Barre for a half a day, they get an extra 30 cents by the end of the year. Like, I guess that's why they hire guys with math degrees to be the assistant to the GMs, right? I mean, that's the whole thing.
That's right. And hey, guys, since we're going to talk Steelers on this segment a little bit, we like to give breaking news on this show. And my friend and colleague, Mark Cabali, just tweeted out the news that Mike Tomlin has just been given a 3-year contract extension through 2027. So a little bit of news to throw in there right through a segment. Good for me for looking at the phone when Joe was talking, but
no, good for I guess that's good news, right? Now we really do need another hour of a show to talk.
I know.
You should have saved that for next week, Josh. Well, it's certainly not surprising news.
But I need
Steelers operate.
A graphic to go across the screen, breaking, get the little ticker going. Joe's pink WNBA ticker. Get that going. Yeah. And the wow. So Mike Tomlin. I mean, we all knew that was going to happen, but now I got really excited. I was sitting there thinking that you were going to say Brandon Ayuk was a Steeler.
Sorry, no Deebo Samuel news. Sorry.
When you led with Tomlin, my eyes lit up like he resigned or something happened. Like I couldn't believe you said Mike Tomlin. I'm like,
Joe, I'm living by your statement where you said he's your favorite coach from Monday until Sunday at noon, and like that, like nothing has spoke more truth to me in the last 3 years than that. Like that is exactly how I feel. I was like, oh my god, that's how I feel about him because I like it the rest of the week. I'm like, he's a pretty good coach. I think I like what he does.
Yeah, I think you need to give him security though, so people don't think the players nowadays they try to walk all over these coaches. So you need to have it where Tomlin's not going anywhere, even though we all know he's not going anywhere. You don't know what some 20-year-old kid who's not from Pennsylvania thinks, So
True.
to make sure everybody knows he's not going anywhere. I didn't think he was leaving anyway. So it doesn't.
No.
But 3 years seems a bit excessive.
Yeah.
It does. Well, it's not like the Steelers don't have money, so if that becomes a problem, whatever. No, and I agree with your assessment of Tomlin. I'm often critical of him on Sunday afternoons in the fall because he does drive me nuts during games. But I also think he's a Hall of Fame coach, and there are only so many of those. My biggest issue with him, it's not just Matt Canada, but I don't think Tomlin hires great staffs. And that was one of Bill Cowher's greatest strengths. Bill Cowher's first coaching staff had Dick LeBeau and Marvin Lewis and Dom Capers on the defensive side, for God's sake. Unbelievable staff. Tomlin tends to hire his buddies, tends to hire guys that aren't always all that qualified. And I think it shows at times. So that's his biggest flaw. But he can't deny the success he's had.
I agree with you 1,000%. That's his biggest flaw. But is that an ego thing, or is that the Rooney's being cheap?
Well, they are cheap with the assistants. There's no question about that.
It's hard to get if Alabama's going to pay their assistant defensive back coach more than the Steelers are,
right?
No, it could be down in Tuscaloosa in the winter. That's not bad.
The Steelers do a lot of things properly, but the fact is they always have a very small staff and not a particularly well-paid one. And given the money that they have, given the franchise that they are, it's not a great look. It really isn't.
My biggest problem with Tomlin is just I want him to just kick someone in the ass every now and then, and I don't think he does it quite enough. Not nearly as much as because that's basically Sid's pretty much perfect, so he doesn't have to do it too much, and he gets on Geno in his own ways. But I think that he needs to be like, "What are we doing? Throwing the ball 4 yards on 3rd and 7?" Like. Why I never want to see that screen pass again. There's a few things that happen so many times that I know it's not like hockey where where you get them in the morning, you get them the pregame, you get them where you have 5 times a day to grill them. But I just wish Tomlin would just really change a few things that I've seen 3,000 miles away for 5 years. It seems like something should change on that front.
I agree. And also their general lack of discipline has become a real problem in the last 2 or 3 years.
But is that everybody though, Josh? Like, is that everybody? It seems like every team is just undisciplined.
That could be
TikTok video waiting to happen.
That's you're probably right. You do get the sense sometimes he's a little too buddy with the players. But I have heard it said a time or two that he's never had a losing season, and he hasn't. You cannot deny the record that he's put up. There will be pressure on him to have
I wish he had more 10-win seasons.
Right. There's going to be pressure on him to make a Super Bowl run at some point without Roethlisberger. That will greatly help Tomlin's legacy to pull that off. But they have a lot of talent right now on this team. There's no reason they shouldn't be a pretty good team.
I'm surprised Tomlin wanted 3 years, to be honest with you. It seems like if things get any worse, I know he still had a winning season. But the heat gets turned up, he can easily just go take an easy job somewhere on TV for a year and a half and then go cherry pick into a win-win-win situation with a really good quarterback.
Yeah, I just don't think he wants to leave. I remember a couple of years ago, all those rumors popped up about USC and Tomlin going to USC. And he actually talked about it at his press conference, which he never answers questions like that. And he said, "You realize I've got the best job in the world, right?" And I think he meant it. I really do. I don't think he has any desire to coach anywhere else. I think he meant that statement. And boy, he's been in Pittsburgh since 2007. Now he's signed through 2027. You do not see that in this day and age.
Well, coaching in college though, like you have to go trick 17-year-old kids to come play for you.
Yeah.
Right.
As opposed to saying I'm coach of the Pittsburgh. It is it's the Yankees, it's where you want to be.
And I think he just loves coaching because did you see the pictures of him at Kennywood? He had his coaching whistle on him at Kennywood. And Like, I don't think that was like him making a conscious decision, like, hey, I should wear this as like a statement to like, get people talking. I think he's just like, he probably wears it to bed. Like, I think he loves coaching. So,
Well, maybe he saw someone on the IR getting on the Thunderbolt. He's whistling them down. He can't ride this ride.
yeah. In the other Steelers news too, Cam Hayward actually showed up at OTAs. And my question to you guys is, first of all, Cam, I will give him credit where he did say, and he's right, he was injured a lot last year, and he was never at full strength. He came out and said he still thinks he's a top 5 player at his position. I guess we'll see, and I'd love for him to prove me wrong, but it looks like the Steelers have him where they want him. I don't think he's going to get the extension he wants. How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, I love Cam. He's Walter Payton Man of the Year. I've dealt with him. He is a gem of a human being. He is a great Steeler. He is not one of the 5 best interior defensive linemen anymore. And whether it's health or not, he's in his mid-30s at that position. He's probably going to get hurt again. That's the way it goes. He's still effective, but I think Cam's got to be a little realistic about where he is in his career. I don't know. I don't know if I'd say I was disappointed when he said it. I don't want to use that word, but I was just a little surprised because I think he probably should know better that he's not quite that guy anymore.
No, he has to say that though because he's trying to get money. And if anything,
Right.
his agent's going to say that for him. So I mean, it's face facts. I mean, full disclosure, me and Cam had the same media agent for a while. He's a great human being and just a great dude. But I will say this: the hand wringing and the oh my God, Cam Hayward can't leave. It's the Has Cam Hayward ever won a playoff game? I mean, we're ready to ship Geno Malkin back to Matagorsk. He has 3 Stanley Cups. We're ready to retire Christopher Letang. He has 3 Stanley Cups. Cam Hayward, I don't remember him making a big tackle in a big game to save my life, but yet he can never leave. I think we can get over it. I think,
Yeah, I mean, I think
he's a great human being, but he hasn't exactly won a bunch of shit.
But as we know, the Steelers have moved on from better players, as good as he is. There are people, especially your generation, Joe Franco, playing in a Seattle Seahawks jersey. For me, when I was growing up, it was when the Steelers decided to part ways with Rod Woodson. Like I was devastated as a 16-year-old. Like, oh my God, you can't let Rod Woodson go.
It's the only one that Dan Rooney regretted.
Yeah, he actually said that he wish he would have handled it differently. So. I mean, Cam's a great player. He's not Franco or Rod Woodson. You can move on from guys.
He's not Franco here. I mean,
the
he's
best
not
organizations do move on. New England was famous for getting rid of people who were all-time greats, but when they just weren't the same player anymore. That's the way it works.
Well, it's even really not a great point to debate for Mr. Hayward is the kid that came in played better than he did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I forget his name right now, but he was
Keanu Benton, I think. Yeah,
yeah.
No, I mean, Cam was not the same guy the last couple of years.
But but I want to see him stay. But the fact, he has to die a Steeler, and he's not Mean Joe Green,
right?
We can all,
yeah. I mean, and that's okay.
He's not even on the all Steeler all-time team.
No,
for Christ's sake.
Yeah, wonderful player, but I mean,
is he a Ring of Honor guy?
Yeah, that's
sure he is.
Been 10 years, 15 years, we'll do that.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
He's not the Hall of Famer, roll out the red carpet.
I have no problem giving him all the flowers he wants. But if he wants X amount of money for X amount of years, he can go play for the Arizona Cardinals for a couple
if this is his last season in Pittsburgh, that's okay. That's the Steelers will move on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that way. And man, I am just thinking more about the Tomlin extension and all the good stuff that we get that goes along with that. The Tomlin translator's here for another 3 years. One of the greatest segments on DB. I know people that, just general people in life that don't listen to the DB morning show that know of the Tomlin translator. It's that good. I will say though,
I thought everybody listens to the DB morning show.
Well, you might be, because it is that synonymous, but yeah, no, I remember, and just a little throwback. I remember in 2008, I was an intern at ESPN Radio, and I had to give a summary every week of. I was working the Stan and Guy show at the time, and Tomlin would come on with his press conference, and then they talk about it afterwards. And I'd have to sit there and type up for the Bristol, what happened during, what did Tomlin say during the press conference. And I was like telling my dad halfway through the season, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like it's the same thing over and over again. And that amazes me to this day that it's still, it's like 16 years ago, and he still gives the same answer over and over again.
He would be a wonderful politician.
Yeah,
he really would.
He gets his team. I will say this though, he never loses that team.
Nope. No,
and that's one of the most incredible coaching jobs in football. To go out and get into a car wreck 50 times a Sunday. We've all seen the teams that quit. I bet on half of them.
Yep.
On Sundays, and it's like the Steelers never don't. They play hard every single game. They may not win those games when but it's like they play hard. I'm happy he's gonna be around because I can't think of it. If we have a bad coach, how awful life would be. I mean, he may not be Vince Lombardi, but he's better than a lot of them.
Well, the whole 3 coaches since 1969 thing is pretty cool. I mean, really, we're talking 55 years, 3 coaches.
I've only known 3 coaches in my whole life.
Yeah, me too. It's
I came in with the Emperor and Mean Joe. I was born in '69.
Oh yeah, you were like that was your rookie year.
Yeah.
Oh, so you've had a charmed Steelers life because you were 6 years old when they won, or 5 years old when they won their first Super Bowl. So
yeah,
5.
And I still call those Steelers my Steelers.
Yeah.
All the rest are just phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. When I was a kid, they were the Harlem Globetrotters. They never lost.
No, they should have won.
And we had Mean Joe and Franco and Swan and Stallworth and Brad. I mean, we had everybody. Lambert. They were super. They was like the Hall of Justice.
If you ever, to tie this in a little bit to the McDavid and his quotes and stuff like that versus Sid and everything like that. If you ever watched, there was this great NFL greatest games ever played, like hour and a half long documentary ESPN would put out with NFL films on Super Bowl 13, the Cowboys versus Steelers. And, it was mixed in with interviews and a little bit of like the NFL films footage with game footage and the broadcast and everything. And I forget the guy's name. He was the safety for the Cowboys, number 43 or something like that.
Cliff Harris.
Yeah. And he was bitching and moaning about, like, he was talking about, well, they had this and they had that. And the one play in particular was, he said he ran into the referee and that's why Franco scored the touchdown, which like, and I thought Lynn Swan, and I use this, I mean, I coach like little kid sports now, but like I used this even when talking to anybody about sports. I said, the greatest quote is, he said, there are a couple moments in every game that determine the outcome of the game, and the great teams make those moments, and the losing team, the bad teams, lose those moments. He said, and we made those moments. And I'm like, that, and I think about that all the time when you were talking about, I didn't think we'd get there on this point, but when you were talking about McDavid earlier, it's like there's those little moments, and that Bobrovsky, that leg kick save. I mean, that's one of those moments that wins a Stanley Cup,
I use that in my stand-up. And Burr always Burr always reminds me of that too. It's like the game gives you moments. It's what you do with those moments when you're in the garden or when you're on TV, whatever. That's, you got to come through.
Yeah.
And Swanee certainly did. And the other one I always use is the John Madden Super Bowl speech. This will be the greatest day of your life, only if you win.
Yeah. Well, that and then the great Herb Brooks.
I always use when I have a big set. Like this will
Herb
be
Brooks
awesome.
before the Finland game. Everyone talks about a speech before the Russian game in the semifinals, but before Finland, he reminded them that they'll be taking it to their graves if they don't win this game.
Well, that's because that's the way
period too. They were losing, I think.
They were 2-1.
Yeah.
And he said, if you lose this game, you'll take it to your effing grave.
That's right.
And the no truer words have been said.
And that's really what's in my head. Like when I was at the Garden, I'm like, if I don't do well, I'll regret it the rest of my life. Thank God I did good.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to check out Joe, he mentioned it before, but he'll be around California. Look up Joe Bartnick because Joe, I say this. I mean, I told you this personally, but I say it on the show. It's not blowing smoke. Absolutely killer hour, brand new hour. That's just. It felt like it was ready for a special, and I can't even imagine how much harder, how much more refined it's going to get between now and next spring when you film it. So,
well, yeah, we have no date to film. I'm still working on getting. I need 15 more minutes too, so then we have something to chip away at. So I get a good 45 now. So
yeah. No,
so when you come see me, I do an hour. So 10 of it's bleh, and 5 of it's from the old special. You'll be able to. You can pick out which ones are which.
Yeah, and Josh, we'll get to that question, but you check him out, his article, the mailbag, if you want that question about Sidney Crosby and McDavid. He answered it in there, and yeah, guys, we'll see what happens in Game 2 and beyond, and we'll talk next week, and we could either have a series wrapped up, or who knows, we could be right in the thick of it. I have a feeling it's going to be a long one, so let's see what happens, and as always. Yeah, yes. Hopefully I would love a 7-game series. I think we all would. Email the show. It's the number 2 for talking podcast at gmail.com. And we will talk to you guys next week.